Congressional Representative Henry Cuellar was just indicted by the Department of Justice. Now, Cuellar is a Democrat who represents Laredo and other parts of the US-Mexico border. Barely hung on to a seat in 2022 after top Democrats helped him defeat a progressive incumbent challenger. We'll have more on that in a second, but we want to take you through the details of the indictment first. According to the Associated Press, from 2014 to 2021, Cuellar and his wife accepted nearly $600,000 in bribes from an Azerbaijan-controlled energy company and a bank in Mexico. And in exchange, Cuellar agreed to advance the interests of the country and the bank in the US, according to the indictment. Among other things, Cuellar agreed to influence legislation favorable to Azerbaijan and deliver pro-Azerbaijan speech, a pro-Azerbaijan speech on the floor of the US House, the indictment states. The DOJ laid out the charges Cuellar and his wife Imelda are each facing, and we have those for you here. 2 counts of conspiracy to commit bribery of a federal official and to have a public official act as an agent of a foreign principal, 5 years in prison on each count. 2 counts of bribery, 15 years in prison on each count. 2 counts of conspiracy to commit honest services wire fraud, that's 20 years in prison on each count. Those are serious charges. 2 counts of violating the ban on public officials acting as agents of a foreign principal, 2 years for each. 1 count of conspiracy to commit concealment, money laundering, 20 years. 5 counts of money laundering, 20 years in prison on each count. Even though Cuellar voted with Trump 69% of the time during Trump's first 2 years in office, top Democrats rallied to support him. They were trying to help get him elected in a tough primary against Jessica Cisneros, who was an outside challenger in that primary and a Justice Democrat. A month after Cuellar's home was raided, this was February of 2022, 2 months before the primary runoff with Cisneros, the Speaker of the House, then Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, doubled down on her support for Cuellar. I support my incumbents. I support every one of them from right to left. That's what I do. But when she was asked about the raid, she said, I don't know what it is. I haven't seen anything, have you? Do you know what it's about? And then the week before the election, then House Majority Whip James Clyburn flew to Cuellar's district to campaign. This came just 2 days after Politico leaked the draft SCOTUS opinion showing that they were about to overturn Roe versus Wade. So when asked about Cuellar's anti-choice positions, Clyburn said, I don't believe we ought to have a litmus test in the Democratic Party. I think we have to bring as many people into the party as we possibly can. This whole notion that you've got to agree with everybody on everything is pretty sophomoric to me. So with that said, going into that tough primary, Cuellar barely edged out Cisneros, beating her by just 281 votes. Now, Cenk, this is something that I know upsets you. It's blatant corruption. It's Democrats rallying for somebody who is just voting with Republicans time after time after time and flying in the face of these ideals and these objectives that they say they care about.
Pausing here to deliver some honest truth as we do in our news coverage as well. TYT is facing challenges, guys, as the entire industry is. You know who could make the difference? You. If you hit the join button below, it's gonna make all the difference and keep us in business. We appreciate you, thank you. So the Democrats are running this 2024 campaign on, you can't vote for the guy with all the indictments, while backing a guy with all these indictments. So they're bad on the substance and they're terrible at the politics. So why did they, like, if you think the FBI is targeting Cuellar unfairly, for no reason at all, they just picked this random Democratic congressman and decided that they were going to tie him to a connection with Azerbaijan. I mean, that's a deep state conspiracy that top anything that Trump and MAGA guys have. That would be the most nuts thing the deep state ever did. So they knew he did it. They knew he was corrupt. They knew he was gonna get indicted. But Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, all of Democratic leadership was like, no, we would prefer the guy who's corrupt and who will later hurt our chances of winning a lot than have a progressive who's actually gonna represent the voters. She doesn't even take any corporate PAC money, this Jessica Cisneros. Boo! Remember, guys, they didn't back Cuellar against a Republican. They backed Cuellar against a much better Democrat that had none of these issues, totally clean, agreed with the Democratic agenda about 100%. Remember, Cuellar only voted with the Democrats 31% of the time during the Trump era. So Pelosi and all of Democratic leadership said, I would rather take a Trump supporter who, by the way, is anti-choice. He's against abortion rights, who I know is going to get indicted and is a crook who's been taking bribes, than have someone who actually agrees with the Democratic voters rather than the Democratic donors. That's who the Democratic Party is. What you see on cable news is, it's not the news, it's nothing but propaganda. So if I said this on cable news or NPR or somewhere, their heads would explode. How could you? And guys, it's not hypothetical, I've done it. And they get, whenever you criticize Pelosi on legitimate grounds like this, even NPR hosts that are normally the calmest people on the planet, they get exercised. They're like, how dare you say that, right? But it's true, it is indisputably true. They prefer the crook. Chantel Brown in Cleveland had significant corruption charges against her, funneling money to her boyfriend. And they're like, yeah, but Nina Turner believes in the Democratic agenda and actually wants to get it done. That would suck. Our donors would be super mad. They didn't pick Chantel Brown by accident. There was 11 randos running against Nina Turner. Nobody knew any of them. They picked the most crooked one because that's who they are. And now they're gonna run a campaign where they're gonna say, well, you can't vote for the crook. All right, Was.
Man, just to echo everything that you said, the Democratic Party establishment, if they're good at one thing, it is protecting their hides and taking care of their own. It just shows you that this idea that the Republicans and Trump are the most existential threat in the history of democracy is hogwash. That they would back this guy who was so clearly compromised, who was so clearly corrupted. But they circle the wagons because this guy will back the actual agenda. There's the stuff that they put on websites, and then there's the stuff that they'll rally the troops, to save a Republican speaker for, that whenever we see 80%, 90% of the Congress and the Senate voting on something, that's the actual agenda of the Democratic Party establishment. They don't give a damn what the voters think. That's meaningless. And that's why, honestly, this whole concept that Trump is a threat to democracy is wearing me thin personally, because it's not as if the Democrats get in there empowered by the people who voted for them, AKA democracy, and then enact their agenda. Issue after issue after issue, they go against their own base. And so how is that democracy at play there? So when they come out and they say, oh, we don't like guys that are corrupt. Oh, this guy is, a big threat to democracy. There's no actual substance behind it, folks.
Yeah, so look, even if you're in the camp that, yeah, I hear you guys, but Trump's a bigger criminal. Okay, fine, but isn't that the lowest bar ever? But on top of that, what they'll say is, I agree, Trump is terrible. I agree, Trump is worse. I agree that Trump is a threat to democracy because he actually tried a coup with the fake electors. But I have the credibility to be able to say that. Pelosi, Biden, et cetera, have no credibility. So they, first of all, what democracy? You guys only serve the donors. If you're talking about a democracy of a couple of thousand people who run this country, it's not really a democracy, man. And do they run it instead of the voters? 100%. Do Pelosi, Biden, Mitch McConnell, corporate Democrats, corporate Republicans, do they serve those donors exclusively? There are meta studies that have studied 20 years of legislation that prove definitively that they only serve the donors. So it hasn't been a democracy since 1978. Having said that, yeah, actually formally ending the democracy as Trump is threatening to do would be worse. But that's not a bragging point. And if you're gonna fight that, you should have your own house in order. And so I'm gonna make a point here that is connected to both that and another point, which is, we often talk about AIPAC because Israel's in the news so much and they're corrupting things in the defense contractors and other lobbyists, etc. But guys, look at, it's an auction, open auction. So Azerbaijan's trying to buy Cuellar in Texas. Egypt is trying to buy
cheap as hell
Menendez.
too, by the way, Cenk.
What's that?
He's cheap as hell. Oh my God, 600,000
Yeah.
in 7 years for you to betray your oath to the people who put you up there. Basically 90, 80 grand a year. You're a sitting member of the greatest governing body the world has ever known, and all it took was 80 grand, bro. That's appalling. I'm sorry, man. I'd be a lot more expensive than that. I'm a more expensive prostitute than that, Jordan. Come on now.
Yeah, maybe Menendez was thinking along your lines. That's why he stuffed the cash and the gold and all that. So Menendez is a Democrat from New Jersey, apparently working for the Egyptians. Eric Adams, some charges, maybe at least about his staff, maybe working for Turkey, right? So it's just, they're all for sale. This is a goddamn joke, Jordan.
A couple other things in that primary, which have just sat with me for years since this has happened. At the same time, all these Democrats are rushing down to defend him. And again, pretending like, oh, Roe, we're about to lose Roe. You have to vote. We're gonna go support this guy who won't fight for it and won't help codify it in Congress. That's how much we care about it. But at the same time, the Koch brothers and Koch affiliated organizations were also pumping money into that primary to support Cuellar, and they found welcoming company in Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, Jim Clyburn. These people don't care, and when like you're talking about, the framework of this election coming up, Trump's a crook, and this is an existential election. This is the most important election ever of our lives. Democracy hangs in the balance. You've shown us you don't care about that. If it was an inconvenience, a slight inconvenience, where one progressive could get a House seat, you don't care. And now as a result, because of this, any chance of having a House majority again after this next election got even slimmer. They're shooting themselves in the foot because they love corruption so much.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.